Thalira's slender fingers trembled as she arranged the ceremonial gems on her stepmother's headdress. One wrong placement and punishment would follow, it always did. Her four eyes blinked rapidly, the outer pair scanning for threats while her inner eyes focused on the intricate work. "Hurry, worthless creature," matriarch Alosia hissed, her scaled skin flushing crimson with impatience. "The consortium representatives arrive soon and everything must be perfect." "Yes, matriarch," Thalira whispered, her voice barely audible. Once she had spoken freely, laughed openly, but that was before her mother's passing 3 cycles ago, before her stepmother and stepsisters had revealed their true nature. On Vexus Prime, one of the remote colony worlds where several alien empires intersected, ancient traditions still held sway. Without her mother's protection, Thalira had no rights as the offspring of a second union. Her stepfamily had systematically stripped away everything, her quarters, her education crystals, even her mother's memento locket. Now she existed only to serve. "She's taking too long," complained Sariella, the elder stepsister, sprawled across a levitation couch. "We should have sold her to the pleasure dens months ago." "Silence," Alosia commanded. "Her empathic abilities make her useful for now. I need to know what the consortium envoys are truly feeling during negotiations." Thalira suppressed a shudder. Her ability to sense emotions had become both blessing and curse. It kept her valuable enough to feed and house, but also made her stepfamily's cruelty more unbearable, their hatred and disgust washing over her in poisonous waves. Later that evening, hidden in the shadows of the Grand Hall, Thalira used her empathic gifts as ordered, transmitting the consortium representatives' emotional states to her stepmother through subtle hand gestures. The negotiations seemed tense, something wasn't going as planned. When the envoys departed, Alosia's fury erupted like a solar flare. "They're demanding full repayment within a lunar cycle," she shrieked, shattering a crystal decanter against the wall. "All because that fool your father invested everything in their mining operation." "We could sell the Eastern Territories," suggested Toriana, the younger stepsister. "And admit defeat to the neighboring houses? Never." Alosia's gaze suddenly fixed on Thalira, calculation replacing rage. "But there are other assets we've overlooked." Thalira felt cold dread wash over her. 3 days later, she was awoken before dawn and forced into unfamiliar garments, revealing yet restrictive. Her stepsisters watched with cruel amusement as handlers measured her, examined her teeth, and tested her reflexes. "What's happening?" she dared to ask as a technician drew her violet blood into a sampling vial. Sariella smiled coldly. "Meeting your true worth finally. The Crack's collective pays premium for empaths, especially untouched ones. You should be honored. Pleasure servants to the elite quadrant live far better than you do here." Horror flooded Thalira's senses as understanding dawned. Not just servitude, but slavery awaited her. She attempted to flee that night, but the manor's security systems caught her at the perimeter. The beating that followed ensured she couldn't run again. "Damaged merchandise reduces the price," Alosia had warned the guards. "Leave no visible marks." 2 days later, sedated and caged, Thalira was loaded onto a transport shuttle bound for the orbital docking station. Through drug-hazed awareness, she heard her stepmother's final words to the Crack slaver. 40,000 credits is acceptable, but I want her off-world immediately. She never existed, understood. The family records show my husband had no offspring from his second marriage." The slaver's gravelly laugh cut through Thalira's consciousness. "Matriarch, we've been erasing inconvenient beings for centuries. By tomorrow, your problem is just another exotic product in the Outer Rim markets." Captain Rourke checked his pulse rifle one final time as the mercenary vessel Harbinger silently approached the Crack's slave transport. Battle-scarred and built like a fortress, Rourke had fought in 3 interstellar conflicts before turning to mercenary work. His weathered human face, with its piercing gray eyes and scar running from temple to jaw, rarely showed emotion anymore. "Final briefing," he announced to the 6-person team in the deployment bay. "Our client wants the Aldebaran ambassador and his aides extracted clean. They were taken during the diplomatic incident at Vexus Station. Intelligence confirms they're aboard this transport headed for the slave markets in the Outer Rim." "Rules of engagement?" asked Maddox, the team's demolition expert. "Minimal casualties, but we're authorized to use necessary force. The Cracks aren't known for surrendering." Rourke's voice remained steady, professional. "Our primary objective is the ambassador and 3 aides. We get them, we go clear." The team nodded in unison. "What about other captives?" asked Jensen, the youngest member of the crew. Fresh from the Terran Defense Force, she still carried idealism Rourke had long since abandoned. "Not our contract," Rourke stated flatly, though something flickered in his eyes. We can't save everyone, Jensen. Focus on the mission parameters. As the Harbinger initiated docking procedures disguised as a routine inspection vessel, Rourke felt the familiar ice settle in his veins. Just another job. Get in, complete the contract, get out. Don't make it personal. He had no way of knowing that behind one of those cage doors, a violet-eyed alien woman would change everything he thought he knew about himself, and what he was willing to fight for. The Crack's transport ship shuddered as the Harbinger completed its docking sequence. Alarms blared briefly before the mercenaries' tech specialist silenced them remotely. We have 30 minutes before they realize this isn't a standard inspection, Rourke informed his team through the comm link. Jensen and Maddox take the engine room, Torres and Vega secure our exit. Cooper, you're with me for the extraction. The corridors of the slave ship reeked of fear and disinfectant, a sickening combination Rourke recognized from previous missions. The Cracks were meticulous about maintaining their merchandise in sellable condition. Life signs show holding cells 3 decks down, Cooper reported, her scanner pulsing softly. Multiple signatures, but I can't distinguish species without closer range. They encountered the first resistance at the security checkpoint. 2 Cracks guards whose leathery skin darkened with surprise before Rourke and Cooper neutralized them with stun blasts. Too easy, Cooper muttered. They're not expecting trouble this deep in their territory, Rourke replied, keying in the override codes their client had provided. Arrogance makes for poor security. The holding area doors slid open, revealing rows of transparent cells lining both walls. Each contained beings of various species, some huddled in corners, others pressed against the barriers, eyes wide with desperate hope. Ambassador's signal is coming from the end chamber, Cooper said, already moving forward. Rourke followed, his eyes straight ahead, trained not to look at the captives they wouldn't be saving. It was the only way to complete missions like this: compartmentalize, focus, execute. Yet something caught his peripheral vision, a flicker of movement unlike the others. He shouldn't have turned, shouldn't have looked. In the third cell on the right, a slender figure sat perfectly still amid the chaos. Unlike the other prisoners frantically reaching out or cowering back, she simply watched him with 4 eyes, the outer pair tracking his movement, the inner pair seeming to see straight through him. Her skin held a subtle iridescence beneath its pale lavender hue, and intricate markings traced her temples and throat. What struck Rourke wasn't her alien beauty, though that was undeniable. It was her dignity. Surrounded by horror, drugged and caged, she maintained a composed silence that resonated with something long buried in his chest. Captain, Cooper's voice broke through his trance. We've located the ambassador and his aides. Proceed with extraction, he ordered, forcing himself to move forward. Minutes later, they had freed the Aldebaran officials. The ambassador, a stately being with crystalline appendages, nodded gratefully. The Aldebaran Consortium will honor our arrangement, Captain, he said in his melodic voice. But please, there are others. Our contract was specific, Rourke cut him off, even as his mind returned to those 4 eyes watching him. We need to move. His comm unit crackled. Captain, we've got company, Jensen reported urgently. Crack's security detected the overrides, they're mobilizing. Time to go, Rourke ordered, leading the group back toward the corridor. They moved swiftly, the ambassador and aides keeping pace better than expected. As they passed the row of cells again, Rourke's steps slowed. The 4-eyed woman hadn't moved, but something had changed in her expression, not hope or pleading, but a quiet acceptance that cut through him like a blade. Damn it, he muttered, breaking formation. Cooper, get them to the ship. Captain, that's not in the... Do it, he growled, already keying in the cell override. The barrier dissolved and Rourke stepped inside. The woman didn't flinch or cower, simply regarded him with that unsettling calm. Can you understand me? He asked. She nodded once, yes, her voice was soft but clear. I'm getting you out of here, can you walk? A brief flash of surprise crossed her features before she stood, somewhat unsteadily. The sedatives, they are still in my system. Without hesitation, Rourke swept her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, her body tense against his. Why? She whispered as he carried her from the cell. Don't ask questions I don't have answers to, he replied gruffly. The first blaster shot sizzled past them as they reached the main corridor. 3 crack security officers blocked their path to the exit. Put down the merchandise, the lead Cracks demanded, weapon raised. That one's already sold to the Vexus elite. Rourke's response was a series of precisely placed shots that dropped the officers without killing them. The woman in his arms flinched at the violence but didn't cry out. Hold tight, he instructed, breaking into a run as more alarms blared through the ship. They reached the docking bay amid chaos. The rest of Rourke's team had secured the area, but the looks on their faces when they saw the extra passenger told him everything. "Captain, what the hell?" Torres demanded. "Change of plans," Rourke replied, carrying the woman up the ramp into the Harbinger. "We're taking one more." Jensen stepped forward, blocking his path. "The client won't pay for unauthorized extractions, and you know it. We need that money." Rourke fixed her with a stare that had made hardened soldiers step back. "Then take it from my cut." The tension broke as the ship rocked from a security blast against the hull. "Discussion's over," Cooper announced, sealing the airlock. "We need to go now or none of us gets paid." As the Harbinger disengaged from the slave transport, Rourke settled the woman in the medical bay. The ship's autodoc immediately began scanning her, administering counteragents to the sedatives in her system. "What's your name?" he asked as the ship accelerated into hyperspace, leaving the Crack's vessel behind. She studied him with those penetrating eyes. "Thalira," she answered finally, "and you have made a dangerous enemy today, human." "Captain Rourke," he introduced himself, checking the autodoc's readings. "And trust me, I've made plenty of those." "Not like this," she murmured, her four eyes blinking in synchronized patterns. "My stepfamily will not stop. They cannot afford to let me live free." Rourke should have felt concern at her words. Instead, something long dormant stirred in him, a purpose beyond contracts and credits. "Then it's a good thing," he said, his scarred face almost managing a smile, "that I specialize in impossible situations." The Harbinger limped through the asteroid belt surrounding the Caloris system, its navigation systems compromised by the Crack's pursuit vessel's parting shot. In the ship's cramped medbay, Thalira watched Captain Rourke argue with his crew. "We're burning fuel we can't spare," Torres insisted, arms crossed. "The job's done. We should drop her at the nearest neutral port and collect our payment." "The Cracks have outposts on every neutral port within 3 jumps, Rourke countered, his voice level but unyielding. "They'll be watching for her." "That's not our problem," Cooper interjected. "We've got the ambassador and his people safely delivered, contract fulfilled." Thalira could sense the tension without using her empathic abilities. These humans operated on a delicate balance of loyalty and practicality. Her presence threatened that balance. "My stepfamily paid the Cracks 40,000 credits for me," she said quietly, drawing their attention. "If they've invested that much, they'll offer double for my return." Silence fell across the medbay. "Why would they want you back so badly?" Jensen asked, curiosity overriding her earlier objections. Thalira's 4 eyes focused on the young human. "I know things about their illegal trading arrangements with the consortium, about how my father really died." She paused. "And legally, half of the family holdings belong to me. My stepmother altered records, but the original deeds were filed with the colonial administration." Rourke's expression remained neutral, but something flickered behind his eyes, recognition of how complicated this rescue had become. "We need to make repairs before we can reach any major port," he finally said, a decision clearly made. "There's an automated mining outpost in the belt. We'll dock there, fix what we can, and figure out our next move." No one challenged him, though Thalira could feel their reservations as they filed out. Only Rourke remained, checking the autodoc's readings of her vital signs. "Your crew resents me," she observed. "They'll come around," he replied, not looking up from the display. "They're good people, just practical." "And you're not practical?" she asked. His gray eyes finally met hers. "Not always, not anymore." The mining outpost was little more than a refueling station with an automated repair bay carved into a massive asteroid. For 3 days, they worked to repair the Harbinger while monitoring communications for any sign of pursuit. Thalira, now fully recovered from the sedatives, insisted on helping. Though unfamiliar with human technology, her 4 eyes allowed her to spot minute details the others missed, and her slender fingers could reach components in tight spaces. On the 3rd night, she found Rourke alone in the galley, staring at a star chart. "You should rest," she said, her voice soft in the quiet space. "So should you." She settled across from him, studying his weathered face. "You never told me why you saved me." Rourke continued looking at the chart, but she knew he was no longer seeing it. "I've been following orders for 15 years, he finally said. "Fighting other people's wars, doing what needs to be done, never asking why." He looked up at her. "Something about you, I couldn't just follow orders this time." "Your crew believes you compromised the mission." "The mission was completed, the ambassador is safe. What I do beyond that is my business." Thalira reached across the table, hesitating before gently touching his scarred hand. "On my world, there is a belief that souls recognize each other across lifetimes. Perhaps that is why." Rourke didn't pull away from her touch. I don't believe in souls anymore. Yet here I am, she replied simply. Their moment was interrupted by the station's proximity alarm. Jensen rushed into the galley. Captain, we've got company, Crack's vessel heavy class approaching fast. Rourke was instantly on his feet. How the hell did they find us? Tracking beacon, Cooper answered, joining them. Must have been planted during the firefight. It just activated. How long until the repairs are complete? 3 hours minimum for FTL capability. Rourke's jaw tightened. We don't have 3 hours. Prep for emergency departure. We'll have to outrun them on sublates. As the crew scattered to their stations, Thalira caught Rourke's arm. This is my fight, not yours. Let me go. I can surrender. Tell them I escaped on my own. The look he gave her made her breath catch. Not happening. They will kill you all to get to me. Then we better make sure that doesn't happen. He squeezed her hand briefly before heading to the bridge. The chase through the asteroid belt would have been suicidal for any pilot less skilled than Maddox. The Harbinger weaved between massive rocks and ice formations, using the natural terrain to shield them from the Crack's vessel's superior weapons. They're gaining, Torres called from the tactical station. Cut power to everything except engines and life support, Rourke ordered. We need every bit of speed. Thalira, strapped into a jump seat on the bridge, felt the ship surge forward. The Crack's vessel fired, the energy blast clipping their starboard engine. Port thrusters down to 60%, Cooper reported. We can't outrun them like this. Rourke studied the sensor display for a long moment. Maddox, take us into the debris field at coordinates 227 Mark III. Captain, that's... Do it. The Harbinger banked sharply, heading toward a chaotic swirl of asteroids and mining debris. Thalira's hearts raced as the ship plunged into the maelstrom of spinning rocks. They're following, Jensen confirmed. Good, Rourke replied. Maddox on my mark, full reverse thrust and drop the mining charges. The blast will hit us too at this range, Cooper warned. We'll be shielded by that nickel iron asteroid, they won't. Thalira watched in nervous fascination as Rourke counted down. At Mark, the ship lurched violently backward as Maddox released the mining explosives they'd taken from the outpost. The resulting explosion sent a shockwave of debris hurtling in all directions. The Harbinger rocked dangerously but held position behind the massive asteroid. On the view screen, they watched the Crack's vessel take the full force of the blast, its engines flaring before going dark. Direct hit, Torres confirmed. They're disabled but still intact. They'll have distress calls out, Rourke said. Set course for the Helios trade station. We need to disappear. As the crew busied themselves plotting the new course, Thalira moved to Rourke's side. You risked everything, she said quietly. Why? He looked at her, something softening in his expression. Because for the first time in years, something feels worth the risk. In that moment, surrounded by stars and danger, Thalira felt a shifting in her hearts, a recognition that this human who had saved her was becoming something more than just her rescuer. And by the way his fingers briefly intertwined with hers before he returned to his duties, she suspected he felt it too. Helios Trade Station was a sprawling construct of interconnected habitats orbiting a dying red giant. Known for its policy of neutrality and its discreet approach to visitors' identities, it was the perfect place to disappear, at least temporarily. 2 rooms, 3rd-level residential, Rourke told the station's automated check-in system using one of his backup identities. Week-long stay. The Harbinger crew had split up, Torres and Cooper taking the ambassador's payment to secure supplies, Maddox and Jensen handling ship repairs, and Vega making contact with potential allies. Everyone had a job except Thalira, who now stood beside Rourke in the dimly lit habitat corridor, feeling both out of place and oddly at home. I don't need a separate room, she said quietly. I've taken enough of your resources. Rourke glanced at her as they walked. You need a space of your own, privacy. Privacy is a luxury I haven't known in years, she replied, her 4 eyes taking in the alien surroundings with measured caution. But I appreciate the gesture. The accommodations were sparse but clean, 2 adjoining rooms with basic amenities. When the door closed behind them, Thalira felt a curious mix of relief and tension. For the first time since her rescue, they were truly alone, without the crew's watchful eyes or the immediate pressure of pursuit. You should rest, Rourke said, depositing their meager belongings on the small table. We're safe here for now. Thalira moved to the viewport, gazing out at the massive red star that bathed the station in crimson light. My people believe red stars are crossroads of fate, she murmured, places where destinies intertwine. She sensed rather than heard Rourke approach, his presence now familiar to her empathic senses, a complex weave of duty, vigilance, and something deeper she was still learning to read. "Do you believe that?" he asked. "I believe there are no accidents." She turned to face him, her inner eyes meeting his gaze while her outer pair tracked the subtle movements of his body. "You finding me was not chance." "No," he agreed after a moment. "It wasn't chance that put you on that ship or me on that mission. It was cruelty and commerce." "Yet here we stand." A silence fell between them, charged with unspoken thoughts. Finally, Rourke reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object. "I had Vega acquire this," he said, holding out what appeared to be a data crystal. "It's everything we could access about your family's holdings and the legal records your stepmother tried to erase." Thalira took the crystal, her slender fingers brushing against his calloused ones. "Why would you do this?" "Because you deserve to know what you're fighting for and what you're up against." She studied the crystal, emotions welling up that she struggled to contain. "No one has considered what I deserve for a very long time." "Then they were fools," Rourke said simply. Their eyes met again and something shifted in the space between them. Without conscious thought, Thalira moved closer, her hand rising to touch the scar that traced his jaw. "This one has a story," she said softly. "They all do," he replied, his voice rougher than before. "Will you tell me?" "It's not a pleasant tale." "Pleasant tales rarely leave such marks." Rourke's hand covered hers, warm against her cooler skin. "Another time, perhaps." But neither moved away. The red starlight painted shadows across his features, highlighting the weariness but also the strength she'd come to admire. In his eyes she saw not pity or duty, but something she hadn't dared hope for recognition. "Thalira," he began, uncertainty in his voice for the first time since she'd known him. "This is complicated." "Yes," she agreed, "most worthy things are." When his lips met hers, it was gentle, questioning. Her people's customs were different, but the language of affection transcended species. Her four eyes closed as she leaned into him, her hands finding their way to his shoulders. The kiss deepened, caution giving way to hunger, his for connection, hers for tenderness too long denied. When they finally broke apart, she rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the strange rhythm of his single heart. "I didn't plan this," he murmured into her hair. "Nor I," she replied, "but I welcome it." She looked up at him. "Do you?" His answer was to draw her back to him, and this time there was no hesitation. Later, as they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, Thalira traced the constellation of scars across Rourke's chest. Each told its own story of battles fought and survived. "You've lived many lives," she observed. "All of them alone," he replied, his finger following the intricate markings along her shoulder. "Until now." The peace of the moment shattered as the room's comm unit blared. Rourke was instantly alert, reaching for the device. "Report," he answered. "Captain, we've got trouble," Jensen's voice crackled through. "There's a bounty notice all over the station feeds for her." Thalira felt cold dread replace the warmth of moments before. "How much?" Rourke asked, already moving to retrieve his clothes. 100,000 credits, dead or alive." Their eyes met across the room, the implications clear. Not only the cracks would be hunting now, but every mercenary and bounty hunter in the sector. "Who posted it?" Rourke demanded. "House Alosia of Vexus Prime," Jensen replied. "And Captain, there's more, the bounty doubles if they get you too specifically. They've branded you a kidnapper and thief." Thalira closed her eyes briefly. "My stepmother," she whispered, "she knows I'm alive and free, and she knows who helped me." "Meet us at the backup coordinates in 30 minutes, Rourke ordered Jensen before closing the comm. He turned to Thalira, his expression grim but determined. "We need to move, now." As they hurriedly gathered their belongings, Thalira caught his arm. "Rourke, I can't ask you to face this. Your crew, your ship, they need you. This is my battle." He cupped her face in his hands. "Listen to me, I've spent 15 years fighting other people's battles for credits, taking contracts without caring about the cause." His eyes held hers intently. "For the first time, I've found something worth fighting for. That's mine. I'm not walking away." The fierce certainty in his voice silenced her protests. Instead, she leaned into his touch, letting the truth of his words and her own feelings wash over her. "Then we fight together," she said, her voice stronger than she'd ever heard it. "But I warn you, my stepmother controls resources across 3 systems. She will not stop." "Good," Rourke replied, a dangerous smile touching his lips as he checked his weapons. "Because neither will I." As they slipped from their rooms into the station's crowded corridors, both knew that what lay ahead would test not just their survival skills, but the bond that had formed between them, a bond neither had sought, but both now refused to surrender. Vexus Prime loomed in the viewport, a swirl of emerald and amber against the blackness of space. Thalira gazed at her homeworld with a mix of dread and determination. "We don't have to do this," Rourke said, standing beside her on the Harbinger's observation deck. "We could disappear into the outer rim, start over." "Running forever is not freedom," she replied, her four eyes reflecting the planet's light. "And we both know they would never stop hunting us." The past 2 weeks had been a desperate game of pursuit and evasion. 2 bounty hunters had already found them, professionals who had tracked the Harbinger through 3 systems. Only Rourke's combat experience and the crew's loyalty had kept them alive. Surprisingly, that loyalty now extended to Thalira. After Jensen had taken a blade meant for her during an ambush, Thalira had used her empathic abilities to guide the young human through the trauma, establishing a mental link that eased her pain until they reached medical help. After that, even the most reluctant crew members saw her as one of their own. "The plan is insane," Torres commented, joining them at the viewport. "I want that on record." "Noted," Rourke replied with a hint of a smile. Their plan was indeed dangerous. Return to Vexus Prime, infiltrate the Colonial Administration archives, retrieve the original property deeds proving Thalira's inheritance, and use them to challenge Matriarch Aloja's authority directly, all while being hunted by every mercenary and security force on the planet. "The Colonial Magistrate is expecting us," Thalira said. "Or rather, she's expecting emissaries from the consortium interested in acquiring my family's eastern territories." "And you're sure she'll see us without alerting your stepmother?" Rourke asked. "Magistrate Ven was my father's ally before his death. She never approved of Aloja's rise to power." Thalira's expression hardened. "And she's known for her discretion when the price is right. Which is why half our payment from the ambassador job is going to her," Torres added dryly. Rourke checked the time. "We dock in 3 hours. Everyone knows their roles if anything goes wrong." "We improvise," Cooper interrupted from the doorway, "like always." The Vexen capital sprawled beneath low-hanging amber clouds, its architecture a blend of indigenous design and colonial influence. The Harbinger had docked at a commercial port under false registration, with Maddox and Jensen remaining aboard to ensure a quick escape if needed. Disguised as consortium trade representatives, Rourke, Thalira, Cooper, and Torres made their way to the Colonial Administration complex. Thalira's natural markings had been temporarily altered with specialized pigments, and her outer eyes were concealed with adaptive lenses, a painful but necessary precaution. "Central archives are in the West Wing," Thalira murmured as they passed through security scans. "Magistrate Ven's office overlooks the ancestral gardens." The meeting with Magistrate Ven went exactly as planned, perhaps too perfectly. The elderly Vexen studied their credentials with practiced indifference before dismissing her aides. "House Aloja's territories are not officially available for purchase," she said once they were alone. "Yet you offer considerable funds for inspection rights." "We believe the territories contain resources that would benefit both our interests," Rourke replied, following their script. "And these resources would be—" "The truth," Thalira said, removing her disguise lenses to reveal all 4 eyes. Recognition dawned on the magistrate's face. "Daughter of Thorin," she whispered, "you live." "Barely thanks to my stepmother." Thalira leaned forward. "We need access to the sealed records of my father's estate, the original deeds, not the altered versions Aloja filed after his death." Ven's expression remained neutral, but her eyes darted to the security monitors. "Those records are restricted. Accessing them would require—" "Authorization we've already paid for," Rourke interrupted, sliding a data crystal across the desk. "Half now, half when we leave with the documents." The magistrate considered for a long moment before nodding. "Wait here." As soon as she left, Cooper hissed, "I don't like this," she was too calm. "Agreed," Rourke said, checking the exits. Torres watched the corridor. "Cooper, access her terminal. We need those files now." Cooper worked quickly, bypassing security protocols. "Got them," she announced moments later, "uploading to our secure channel." The door slid open, but instead of the magistrate, 4 armed Cracks enforcers entered, followed by a regal Vexen female whose scaled skin glittered with embedded jewels. "Matriarch Aloja," Thalira said, her voice remarkably steady despite the fear Rourke could sense coursing through her. "Ungrateful child," Aloja replied, her voice dripping with contempt. "Did you really think Magistrate Ven wouldn't recognize Thorin's daughter? Her loyalty was always purchasable, just at a higher price than you could offer." Rourke's hand moved imperceptibly toward his concealed weapon. "Where's Torres?" "Your companion is being detained," one of the Cracks answered. As you will be. The consortium will not be pleased by this treatment of their representatives, Cooper tried, still maintaining their cover. Aloja laughed. Drop the pretense. We know exactly who you are, Captain Rourke. The bounty on your head has made you quite famous. Her gaze shifted to Thalira. And you, stepdaughter, have caused me considerable inconvenience. Not as much as I'm about to, Thalira replied, a new confidence in her voice. The original deeds are now being transmitted to every colonial administration office in the sector, along with evidence of your illegal dealings with the Cracks Collective. Aloja's composure faltered. Impossible, those records were sealed. Were they? Cooper asked innocently, her hand moving away from the terminal. What followed happened in seconds. Rourke drew and fired in one fluid motion, dropping 2 Cracks enforcers while Cooper disabled the security systems. Alarms blared as emergency protocols engaged. Go, Rourke shouted to Thalira, providing covering fire as they retreated toward the secondary exit. They were halfway down the corridor when Aloja's voice rang out behind them. Stop, or your other crew member dies now. They turned to see Torres being dragged forward, bloodied but conscious, a blade at her throat. Surrender the girl, the remaining Cracks enforcer demanded, or watch your friend die. Rourke's mind raced through options, finding none that ended well. He lowered his weapon slightly, buying time. After all this, Aloja sneered, approaching with regal confidence, you'll still lose her, but I might let your crew live if you hand her over now. Don't, Torres managed through gritted teeth. She's lying. The moment stretched, tension building, until a new voice broke through the standoff. Colonial security, stand down immediately. A squad of uniformed Vexen security officers flooded the corridor, weapons trained on everyone. At their center stood a statuesque Vexen female whose markings identified her as a high-ranking official. Administrator Cora, Aloja said, clearly surprised. This is a private matter. Involving the illegal sale of a Vexen citizen, falsification of inheritance documents, and conspiracy with off-world slave traders, the administrator finished. We received some very interesting transmissions moments ago. Thalira stepped forward. The files were received and authenticated, Administrator Cora confirmed, as was the evidence of your stepmother's multiple violations of colonial law. She gestured to her officers. Take Matriarch Aloja and her associates into custody. Release that human. As Torres was freed and the others detained, Rourke kept his weapon ready, too experienced to trust sudden reversals of fortune. Why are you helping us? He asked the administrator. I'm not helping you, human. I'm upholding our laws. Her gaze shifted to Thalira. Daughter of Thorin, your father was a respected voice on our council. His death, which we now know was orchestrated, left a vacuum that allowed corrupt elements to flourish. The evidence you've provided today will help us purge that corruption. And my inheritance, Thalira asked, will be restored to you, as is your right under colonial law. As Aloja was led away, she hissed at Thalira, this isn't over. You think you've won, but you have no idea how to manage your father's holdings. You'll fail, and when you do. She won't be alone, Rourke interrupted, moving to Thalira's side. The look Aloja gave him was pure venom. A human, you would dilute your lineage with an alien mercenary. Thalira straightened to her full height, all 4 eyes fixed on her stepmother. I would honor my lineage by choosing a partner of strength and integrity, qualities you never understood. She turned away. Goodbye, Aloja, may your punishment fit your crimes. 3 days later, the Harbinger prepared to depart Vexus Prime. The crew loaded supplies onto the ship, while Rourke and Thalira stood on the landing pad, the setting suns painting the sky in hues of amber and gold. You could stay, Rourke said quietly. Reclaim your father's house, your rightful place here. Thalira's hand found his, fingers intertwining. My place is where I choose it to be, she looked up at him, unless you're trying to leave me behind. The smile that crossed his scarred face was genuine, not a chance.